Welcome to the Seikird Healing Podcast, where the old is new, the ancient is innovative, and the forgotten is remembered. We believe that sacred healing is your birthright. Join us on each episode as we uniquely, authentically, and mystically dive into the bold and vulnerable life of many magical humans. From breath, spirituality, shadow work, and all things in the esoteric realm of healing, we don't leave any stone unturned on this bold journey of growth as we start to explore the remembrance of what it means to be human. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and let's get sacred. Today, I want to share with you all the delicious cacao with a K, ceremonial grade drinking chocolate. Cacao is one of my favorite brands of ceremonial grade cacao, and it's a delicious addition to my morning routine. Cacao is jam-packed with delicious nutrients that work with my body to stay energized and connected and focused. What I also love about cacao is that they are a nonprofit on a mission to protect the native heirloom strands of cacao in Peru and Guatemala by giving back to the farmers and communities that make it available for us. If you are interested in cacao with a K, go to the show notes and you will find a link for 10% off your first order, or simply by using the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all capital letters, at checkout. Hello, sacred beings. My guest today is Yasmin Crystal Santos. She is the self-proclaimed love child of yuppie and hippie mentalities. She is a passionate poet, as well as a brilliant creative marketer and the founder of Alter Native, a non-alcoholic elixir bar serving functional beverages and native brews in Austin, Texas. She is a true artist and healer, and I'm so excited to welcome her to the show. Enjoy this episode with Yasmin. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Seikird Healing Podcast. I am here with the beautiful, furry Yasmin, and she holds a really dear place in my heart because she was one of the first people to read a poem that I wrote and give me feedback on that poem. And she herself is a beautiful poet and has been really just like an inspiration to create art in my life. And we had a really, really deep connection, and we were just reminiscing. It was almost like a year and a half ago. And so I just am so excited to welcome her to the show. She's just creating and weaving really beautiful things into the world in her kind of new place that she's living in, which is Austin, Texas. And she created a business called Alter Native, which we'll get into. And yeah, she's just a really like bright light in the world. I'm just so grateful to have you today and to connect and to just like really dive into all these like juicy, crunchy topics, because I know we're going to get into some shit today. Because you're willing to go there. So thank you for being on the show and being just like a bright, inspirational light for me.
Wow, thank you. I feel really honored to be invited as a guest. And yeah, I am willing to go there, like open book.
Yay. So let's get into poetry first, because that's like what inspired our connection. And I remember like the first time a poem kind of like came to me, I was like, oh, what is this? Like, what's happening right now? You know, like a poem actually like coming through me rather than like, okay, I'm in middle school and a teacher's like prompting me to write about something and oh, you have to do like a haiku or whatever. Right. So it was like actually a poem that came through like my soul, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And so I immediately started just like writing everything down, and it was really, really raw, and you helped me like kind of look it over and like do some edits. And I actually still have not released that poem to the world yet. It's like still something, I know it's fucked up. It's like my first poem and it has not been like released out yet. So I'll do that at some point.
That's okay. And if I remember correctly, I had very few edits. I was like, this is gorgeous. And if I'm remembering, it was bilingual. You had Spanish,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it came through in English and in Spanish, which is
That's incredible.
it was just going.
Are you fluent?
No, no. I studied Spanish in school. And I went to Peru for like study abroad. So like I know some Spanish, but like it's been years and it came through in English and Spanish, which is just like so weird.
I mean, it came through grammatically correct in Spanish as well, because I speak Spanish.
I could not talk to you like that. Like it just, I don't know why it came through like that. It just did. So here we are.
Out of curiosity, what was happening in your life when that poem came through?
So it was actually, we were together. We were in a ceremony together doing despacho, where we like wrote things on a piece of a tree branch that we found on some land in Texas. And there was a huge fire. And what I remember is that there was like a full moon. And I remember seeing like a ring of like red around the moon. Like it was like really intense full moon. And we, through our despacho ceremony, like letting go of ceremony into this fire. And it was like right after that the poem came through, and I had like had to write it all down. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. Yes. And like literally, and this is just fucked up, but like literally a year later, like to the day, because I was like, tinkering with it and trying to edit it and like make it feel like more, I don't know, alive. Even though you mentioned that it like kind of just was cool the way it just kind of came through pretty cool. But like a year later to the day, I like opened up a journal and I was like, oh, there's that poem again, like I haven't done anything with or released to the world. And I was in the middle of basically like a breath ceremony, and I had wandered off into nature to like sit with a tree, and I was just sitting there and I opened my notebook and it happened to open to my poem. And so I like went back and started to finish it. Like I was like, oh, it needs like a proper ending. And so I started to finish it. So now it's like feeling more done, but I still haven't like released it into the atmosphere yet. So weird.
Well, let's see when you feel the time is right. Maybe
I know. We'll see. But I would really love to hear about your journey of becoming a poet and like what that meant for you in terms of like art and sharing your art with the world and being kind of like this creative flow. And before we jumped on, we were chatting about how poems used to kind of just like come to you. So I would love to hear about kind of how you got into the process of bringing spoken word to paper, and like also not only to paper, but bringing that into like the artistic form of reciting poetry, which is like another art form in itself. And I feel like you have this amazing gift to do that. So I'd love to chat about that process for you and kind of how you got on the path of being a beautiful poet.
Yeah, so I've always been writing. I mean, I've got 10 years of iPhone notes of just little blurbs and lines, and some are full poems. And I actually go back and thank goodness they're saved, but I go back and read these things that I was writing at 16 years old. And there's themes of compersion and like self-awareness. I'm like, who is that girl? So I think kind of just born with it in that way. And the first time that I did spoken word, it was an acting class that I was taking, and that was an assignment to do a spoken word poem. It was actually a slam poetry piece, which is just a different flavor of spoken word. There were three of us, and I remember writing most of it, and just it came through the way the poems come through now. And then in college, I would watch slam poetry on YouTube, but wasn't writing, wasn't aspiring to be a poet. It wasn't until 2021. So this was like after awakening and writing a lot, but not poetry. I went to an event, and my current favorite poet in Q was at this event and led a workshop. And that was the first time that I wrote a spoken word piece. And it was like meant to be performed. So that one was called Born Perfect. And then right after that event, everything in my life collapsed. Like I was at my lowest, something that I speak of often when I'm like on podcasts or on platforms is like suicidal ideation. I had a little bit before awakening, and something that isn't often heard or I don't hear spoken about is like it got a lot worse for me after awakening. And so at this point is like I'm in the depths of despair of that, and my desire to depart was deep. And like I said, everything just kind of collapsed. My relationship, my work, where I was living. And so I made writing my full-time job. And I would sit down every day at the same table and like make a cacao and just write a poem. And the poem would come through that day. And I'd spend the rest of the day learning the poem and practicing it. And like, that's just that's how I stayed alive. Like the document that I wrote it in is called Spoken Word Staying Alive. And so the first one that I wrote was actually called How Do I Stay Here? Yeah.
Wow. Talk about like a sacred healing practice. Yeah. Just like when you're feeling the depths of despair, enough so like not wanting to be on the planet. Like what a healing practice to be able to take just something that's accessible to everyone, like a piece of paper and a pen, and just write what's coming through your heart. And I think that a lot of people would really resonate with that, and hopefully hearing it even will help some people that might be having those feelings, because it's fucking hard out there. It's where the world is going through really, really challenging times. So I appreciate that you've shared that. Do you, is that available for like the world to read yet?
I really do need to put these written poems somewhere. They are recorded. They're professionally recorded. They're to be an album. They just need soundscaping, like to add a bit of music. And so I'm waiting for the right artist to appear to do that. I could definitely be more intentional about finding one. I think the poetry stopped coming through after I realized that there was an album there. And I like to think that is the muse prompting me to work toward releasing that album and not for new work. Mm-hmm. So that is in the works.
Wow, that's amazing. I cannot wait to hear it, because the first time I saw you do a poem live, I was like, whoa, okay, mic fucking drop. Like it was just so like I said, inspirational. Like you inspired something like in my cells of my body to like use my voice in a different way that I hadn't done before, and that I hadn't known was possible. Or I knew, I just didn't remember that it was possible. It was like a forgotten part of my being. And so it awakened this thing in me that was like, oh shit, like you can use your voice in this way. That's really fucking cool. So I would love, I know we chatted a little bit before we jumped on about just like you sharing some of your work. And maybe even before you share some of your work, you mentioned kind of like how you got started in poetry with this like slam poetry type of work. What does it look like for you now? And then maybe we can get into some of your work that you've put together.
Sure, yeah. So right now, like I said, the spoken word pieces aren't coming through. And those, besides when I first began, where it was very intentional, like this is what I'm doing with my day, with my life right now. After that, once things got better, because these poems became my like my anthem, my song, my prayer, and pulled me out of that space. So once I was out of that, I've never been, I hang out with a lot of artists, and everybody has put such great emphasis on creation and the act of creating, and like creating the next thing and the next thing and never stopping. And I never resonated with that. For me, it was like, it comes when it comes. And when it does, I pay attention and I bring it through. But other than that, I'm just pretty lax with it. So a full poem hasn't come through, but every once in a while I'll get snippets. I have a poetry page where I post like poems that are more meant to be read. And currently the last ones are pretty erotic, which is fun. That began this year as well. I guess there's a liberation happening in that regard as well. And so they're very reflective of what's happening in my life. And sometimes the words just come through to carry out an emotion.
Yeah, it's a form of like expressing something out of your body into life form, paper form, word form. And there's two other things I want to mention too, because at one point you were doing a practice where you would get up and write one poem per day, which I think is like, that's awesome, just to put word on paper. But another thing that's really cool is that you memorize your spoken word poems. To me, that's like a terrifying thing. That would be like a really great challenge to do, and like to actually like memorize and then recite. But what is that process like for you, I guess, in terms of you're writing one poem a day and then also like memorizing some of your spoken word poems?
So for that aspect, I think the most important thing is it comes in the writing, right? So you want to write as authentically as possible. And that's what I say. I do very little editing after the fact, because the more authentic it comes through, the easier it is for you to remember, because they're your own words. And you're going to, it's almost like, when you can finish somebody's sentence, you're finishing your own sentence pretty much. So my process for memorizing it is the same as an actor that memorizes lines. Like, you just read one line, say it out loud, try to connect the last word to the first word of the next line. And you just do that over and over and over from the top line to the bottom. And then I'll practice. I'll practice in front of the mirror. I'll go on walks and look like a crazy person, just reciting my poems to myself and having a reference. So like, I'll pull it up on my phone or computer. And if I get stuck, it's okay. They're right there. And at some point I'll remember.
Well, would you grace us with a few of your poems? What I'd love to do is have you recite a poem, and then let's talk about it. Let's talk about kind of like what it's all about. So I don't know if you have any chosen ones that feel really resonant right now, but I would love to dive into a poem.
Okay. How about we do the one that sparked you? The reason I'm here right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this one's called Sowing Seeds, or Sowing Star Seeds. I'm going to jump right into it. It was the end of 2019 when I remembered. That was a time I felt fully surrendered. And while reading a text of great truth, I was reminded of my galactic roots. It didn't come immediately. I had to dive deep, question, and listen. What I knew with certainty is that I was on a mission, an earthly expedition as part of a divine coalition, all of my own volition. I am a volunteer. That much is clear. I came here with a purpose which is slowly coming to the surface. My heart's true desire is to love and to be loved and to help as many people as possible. I came to write a song, and perhaps to right a wrong, to clear karmic debt as I venture toward my deepest depth. My song is one of love that I channel from above, and when I feel unsteady, it's how I remind myself that I am ready, because I have done the work, a lot of it, but the work is never done. And this genomic jacket I have on is sewn with sorrow, trimmed with traumas and lined with limiting beliefs. But I will don it, even if sometimes I don't want it. I need it. Because it's a cold world and this zipper only zips once. So I will learn to love this attire, to worship and admire, because the more self-love that I acquire, the more I receive what I desire. So I will work until I tire to take my soul even higher. And when my time has expired and I reflect on all that transpired, I will be so proud of myself for being a warrior of light who came here to fight against the darkness with all the love that I can harness as a starseed, a light worker, a wanderer, a philosophical ponder, and as a human who is happy, healing, and hurting all at the same damn time. Don't worry. I'm fine. I know this life is divine and that my soul is eternal. A mantra I write in my journal because not everything needs to be verbal. Just this poem, because words are my seeds and I must sow them.
Woo! Oh my God. It gives me chills. Like when you speak, it gives me chills. When did you write this poem, and what was going through your heart when you kind of like had this come through?
That was the third one I wrote. So the third day of my little one poem a day process. And that's the one that became my anthem, like my soul song, my reminder. And so like when thankfully the desire to depart has diminished, and that came from that happened last year, and a poem came through about that, and it kind of just cinched that. And I do feel that it's in my past, hopefully. But there are times of anguish, and in those moments, I just begin reciting this poem.
Wow. And you wrote that last year, so 2022.
2021.
2021. Okay. It's like a year and a half ago. Yeah. Wow. Whew. Well, that is a beautiful, beautiful anthem. And there are so many moments in it that it's like, it just flows, but you can tell that it's supposed to be spoken. Because if you were just like reading the words on the paper, like even the moment when you were like, talking about the light and the darkness, you're using like quotations, you're using things with your, not only like your emotions and the inflection and tone in your voice, but you're using your hands to speak and like convey the true message. And so it really is like a spoken word thing. It's not like you could read it and really understand the inflection or the tone that you're trying to give to the word.
No, absolutely. And something interesting is this year I've had such a calling to learn ASL, American Sign Language.
Really?
And it's been a theme that keeps coming up. And of course, the universe is sending little God winks. Like it came up, and then I went to go watch the movie Creed 3, I think. And, his wife is deaf, so they're doing sign language. I'll go, went to a restaurant and there was a deaf man signing. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm listening. And so I started with the alphabet. And I think that what I would love to do is recite poetry and do it in sign language at the same time.
Wow. That would be so powerful. And also like, what a gift for people that can't hear to be able to like really understand the words that you're saying, but also like with the sass that you have too. And I feel like what a better nod from the universe than to like, if you keep getting those little signs to do sign language.
I need to commit. Definitely. I will. I know I will. It'll be my project further.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Sure. That's awesome. So that was your third poem that you wrote. Wow. That is like, it's just so magnificent. What, if you don't mind me asking, what was the process of like the poems were coming through, but it was like on day one versus like day, 100. How did your poems change? Like, how did that morph? Because the third poem, if that's your anthem, like, holy fucking shit. Like, where do you go from the anthem, right? Like, how did that morph over time? Or was it like an ebb and flow for you?
Definitely an ebb and flow. I mean, they really are reflections of what I'm living in the moment. I'm looking through my document right now, and I guess I have a style. I have a style, and it remains through. It's like pretty constant in most of the poems. I hope does that kind of answer what you were asking?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's one of those things where you do have a style, like you have like a you-ness to your poems, and like it makes me smile. So yeah, it does answer it. I would love to hear another one if
Yeah.
you would be willing to share. We'll just make this a whole poetry jam. This is like it's turning into that.
I mean, when I listen to podcasts with poets, that is my favorite part of the podcast, to hear their poetry. And then of course for it to be expanded upon. So I am happy to.
Who is that poet that let me look this up real quick. Who is the poet that came? It was like the cutest little old lady that came on Aubrey Marcus's show. She was so cute.
I don't remember a poet. I remember a linguist.
Oh, maybe it was a linguist. But she read poetry, didn't she? Hold on. I need to know the answer to this now. Yeah, here she is. I hope this doesn't start playing. Hold on. Laurel Erica. Do you know her?
No.
She's like an old, like cute lady. Anyway, I'll send it to you because
Yeah, I was gonna say.
yeah, she talks about learning to command spells of the English language through word, and she's like this cute little lady. Laurel Erica is her name, and she basically like recites poems the entire time, and like she reminds me of you, but like an older lady version.
I would think that. No, yeah, okay. I think that's maybe what I meant by linguist. It didn't have like the proper terminology, but I do remember listening to someone who had a depth of knowledge about, yeah, spell casting and language.
Yeah, yeah. She's like very prolific in the way that she uses words. And you remind me of her. So
What
yeah.
a compliment. And I do like, the Four Agreements, the one that's about word, that's the one that landed hardest with me. Be intentional.
Yeah, be intentional with your word. And words are spells for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, I live that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, all right. Well, let's hear another one. So
okay. We can do like the prequel to that poem, like day one, just trying to stay here. It's called How Do I Stay Here? How do I stay here when it feels like a jail, compared to the freedom I felt beyond the veil? How do I go on when my heart is numb and my most common thought is life is dumb? How do I keep emanating joy and light when what I deeply desire is to give up this fight? How do I respond to, seriously? But why? You're so pretty and so smart. You want to die? How do I convey that it doesn't stem from despair? I'm not over here like my life is so unfair. No victim mindset here. My life is auspicious and abundant, but that's what brings me fear. Because it's like, how do I go up from here? And sure, there's so much that I have yet to see. I can't even begin to fathom how happy I could be in a month or 2 or 3. But how do I wait for what awaits me when nothing I think or see or do sates me? Because I can't feel. All the love I know is real, showing me how much I have left to heal. You know, I'm told all the time, you are so radiant. You are so divine. Well, yeah, but it doesn't feel mine. I am but a vessel that light pours through, just a fractal of consciousness and an avatar that used to seek itself in a church pew. What am I supposed to do? I ask and search and decide on things to hold on to, like standing here in front of you, sending sound waves through this mic. Good God, it makes my heart rate spike. And that's the paradox I've been living through. A calm mind, but a body so wound up, I can't unwind. I confront my higher self and jeer, why am I here? I just want a hug from my mom. But of course she's gone. She died in May, on Mother's Day. If only I liked to drink, then I could wipe this tear and just drink my beer. But I don't like alcohol. So I reach out to a peer and ask her, what do you think is going on here? She asks, well, what is the root of the pattern? I said, hell if I know, a Pisces Saturn. I do think about it though. And I do feel like I know. It can only be one thing. A lack of self-love must be the answer. Swallowing me whole like a cancer as I waltz with my pain like some fucked up ballroom dancer. So, how do I stay here? I breathe. And I remind myself that this is all a game and that I chose to be here, to experience pain and fear, to evolve my soul until it's whole enough for the next density, through third, fourth, fifth, sixth, with a propensity toward unity. And there, I won't feel this heartache. I won't feel much of anything but love. And I'll want to break from that, come back down here and end up exactly where I'm at. So I tip my hat, sit back, and look at everything around me, realizing that even if it doesn't feel that way, I am free. And I can laugh and surf and sing and eat and dance and hug and fuck and play. And that is how I'll stay. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that one does require like a little bit of context, right? So in my awakening process, I did a lot of medicine, and one of them was Bufo, 5-MeO. And the second time was, blasted off and went into a space that is neither dark nor light. There's no hearing, no seeing, no feeling. It's just being. And I felt myself rising and rising and rising until it got to this point with like a angelic harmonic sound. It was like, oh. And it was like a decision needed to be made. I was like, okay, you can continue to rise with the caveat that you do not return to your body. And so it was almost like, decide right now, up or down. And I decided to come back down. And here I am. And so like remembering that freedom, that eternity, the infinite lightness that is other realms, that is outside of this third density reality, like it was tormenting. It was tormenting to know that place exists and to be embodied in a place where I feel so much all the time. So that one is my song for remembering that it is a privilege to be embodied right now and to experience all of those things.
It just like brings me back to people that are doing medicines and not having like real proper support, community, or integration, to not have a great experience afterwards, and to really need to have this community or tribe of people that they can lean on, because the spot that you were getting in is like, holy shit, I don't know if I even want to be here anymore. And to know that so many people are being awakened to these different types of medicine journeys and not having that support is like really, really something that I don't think that we're necessarily always looking at, from an integration perspective. So there's that. And then there's also like not only this medicine journey, but you also mentioned your mom's passing and other things that were like really resonant in your life at the moment in time. How did you like this poem for me is like an anthem of grief. It's like a almost like a disconnection from like, I don't know, like from being able to love yourself. How did all of these areas of grief that you're going through in your life impact you at that time?
Man, I mean, it was deep. It was and it was compounding too. So my mom's passing was a result of early onset dementia, and I became her legal guardian at 20 years old. And so, and there was a whole, family battle. I had to take my dad to court. And then within all of that is me still living my personal human journey and the devastations of heartbreak and sisterhood wounds and of course the spiritual practices and medicine journeys that I was doing, but yeah, so my mom passed in May on Mother's Day, which I just think is beautifully poetic, and then in August, so 3 months later, my heart was shattered. I mean, this boy put me on a plane and I was staying with him and all my stuff was there, and I wasn't feeling well, so I was going to Florida, and held me the day before. I was grieving my mom. He's like, yeah, I'm here now, and puts me on a plane and then doesn't talk to me for 2 days. And I was like, okay, well, just tell me what my heart already knows. And, he ended up saying like he was feeling that I wasn't feeling right. Meanwhile, I had been questioning. I had dreams. My dreams are very clairvoyant. And I guess he was just lying. I don't know. And I ended up shipping me all my stuff. And that was the week that this poetry started coming through. Like that was like the straw that broke my back. And again, a blessing, because look what it's brought through. And he was a poet, and he had his poems memorized. I remember the first time I'd seen somebody just like recite their own words in an instant. We were on a hike in the woods, and he just like breaks out. And so, thank you, Eric, for all of that.
So a lot of like, thank you, I love you, I forgive you. And also going through not only like grief of feeling this amazing experience and then kind of choosing to come back down into the world of pain and feeling and emotion, losing your mom and losing a partnership, like that's a lot. So the holding that inside your body is also a lot. And so I'm really just grateful that you were able to like release that through spoken word. Wow. What
I just remember there's another thing. My prom date, it was a friend of mine, and we'd stayed in touch a little bit, and I was quite close with his mom. While, in the middle of all of this, he took himself out. He jumped off the Grand Canyon.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so and I'm, in a state of ideation as well, and with that desire to depart. And I'm sure there was like many more little heartbreaks in that moment, but there is a poem that I have that encapsulates a lot of that pain, and is what do I want to say, is something of a PSA, like a public service announcement. It is like, this is happening in the world. People are feeling a deep disdain for life for whatever reason, and we are shaming it, or like keeping it taboo, making it taboo to talk about. And so I say, like, I'm going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Can you share that with us?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love to hear it.
This one's called Ignoring Signs. I thought I was his dream girl. And that's not something I made up. It's what he told me. And how it felt when he told me. I don't understand. I mean, I really don't understand how a love like that could take off and then land so unexpectedly. Not a moment of turbulence. I mean, I gave him the best of me. But retrospectively, there are things that occur to me, like how I'd lived this before, and in my core, I knew. I felt it. Hell, I even dreamt it. But I ignored that sign. Like when I was driving 89 and on my right was a yellow slice of metal that read, "Danger, cliff ahead." And I could see the bend that could be my end. And what was my reaction? I put my foot down and gassed it. The car revved ahead and hit the rail. My attempt to sail was of no avail. I'm alive to tell the tale, and I will prevail. Now, all that was a metaphor, but it is a thought I've had before, and that's a truth I can't ignore. Because the draw toward death, the taking of a last breath, is not something that we talk about. Not enough, at least. So I will use my clout and shout about it. It isn't much. My platform is small. My reach is quite limited, but maybe through the courage I've exhibited, how I wanted to but pivoted, I will inspire someone who otherwise felt prohibited, who wouldn't speak his truth, who wouldn't make a call to Pete or Pat or Paul or reach out at all, who would have isolated himself, insulating himself in pressure and pain, who wouldn't abstain from hitting that wall and ending it all. So I will talk about it. I will post about it. I refuse to drown it. My dance with suicidal ideation. I'll weave it into my word creation, because when I speak and express what's affecting me, it is alchemy, energy transmuted from emotional pain into hormones that keep me sane, a neurochemical reaction that helped me keep my traction. And I appreciate your reaction, because the snaps and applause all go toward a really good cause, reminding me to pause and reflect on what was. Because I came here in a daze. You gaze and watch me spit a verse, and I will leave this space a better person. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, what a beautiful PSA. And also, I love that you are willing to bring all of these like just like really intense feelings into the forefront of how you want to spell with the world, like how you want to put this out into the world to say like, hey, we don't need to shame these feelings. You don't need to hide this. We can talk about this. So I love that you're bringing that to the forefront of, even though you say you have a small platform, you know, like you drew me into your, I don't know, aura, whatever it is. It drew me in to be able to hear and like hear on a deeper level, like hear on a cellular atom level, hear your words so deeply. And that's what kind of drew me to you. And so I know people are hearing and I know people are listening. I actually like can't even wait to like send this out to the world, this podcast episode, so that people can hear your words, because it's so healing. And even somebody in my position, I have not felt those feelings before. I just haven't. And I think that to hear that other people have, like, is like like opens up a whole nother door for me to be like, wow, like maybe you haven't looked at your shadow or darkness enough. Like maybe you didn't go deep enough. And so it just like reminds me that there's more layers there to look at. So thank you. Thank you for that gift. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for holding it, because I'm realizing, like, I really pride myself on not projecting, like holding my emotions close to me. But I'm realizing now that one is still fully charged up because I'm shaking right now. And so thank you. Thank you for receiving that, because I do believe that especially spoken word is a modality for healing. Like both the artist, the one presenting, and the audience hearing is receiving healing, and they're healing each other.
Absolutely. It's a gift. It's like a two-way energy exchange gift. Thank you. And kind of like shifting from some of like the darker emotions into different types of darker emotions, I would love to hear if you're willing to share some of your more recent poetry that you said was like a little bit more erotic. I don't know if you're if you though any of those are like fully baked and ready.
Oh, I love this. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to pull those up to see. Those are not memorized.
Hello, sacred humans. Quickly, I want to share with you something I've added into my daily rituals that has me buzzing, and that is Rise Mushroom Coffee. Rise entered my life through my Instagram algorithm that obviously knows what products I like, and I gave it a try, and just wow, it has amazingly delicious flavor. Not only this, they also have a mushroom matcha powder. Mind blown. And they're filled with superfoods and super mushrooms. What I like about Rise is that they use 100% organic ingredients, and their mushroom farms are located in California. If you've always wanted to try mushroom coffee but haven't yet pulled the trigger, this is your moment. And there is zero risk because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're interested in the deliciousness of Rise mushroom elixirs, head to the show notes and you will find a link for 20% off your first order. Or simply use the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all caps, at checkout. And now let's get back to our amazing episode of the Seikird Healing Podcast.
And
I'm so impressed that all those other poems are memorized. Like, I'm just so absolutely impressed. I
mean, they totally are, but for whatever reason, I'm not trusting myself today, perhaps because I didn't sleep that well, but you know, you'll see me glancing over on the side. It's open. They're open right now. I know them, but it's
all good. Sometimes just like the fact that somebody's recording you is like, ah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The first time I was invited to recite at South by Southwest, and the cameras were like placed in different places, but the monitors, so where the video, you know, previews of what the camera angles are, was right in front of me.
Oh no. So you can like see yourself? Like
yes, and I have actor friends that were like, oh, wow, that would be really like dysregulating. I've never seen myself like projected back before.
Wow. Ah.
Um, what do I want to say about these hats?
Can we like set this up? So like how did you kind of like move into this era? Like what was like what's been coming up for you where you're like, this is now coming through.
Okay. All right. So I grew up in a Catholic household. Well, Catholic, all the things, God, Christianity. And there's beautiful aspects to that, but my mom was incredibly conservative. And so like there was just so much shame around sexuality and body and I was very defiant, especially as a teenager. But that's still stored in me, like from my childhood, from my generational line. Like there's a reason that my mom is that way, right? And her mom was a nun, which I know makes no sense, but she was a nun and she was allergic to the garment. And so she couldn't wear like the nun's garment and had to leave the convent. And so that's how she became a mother. But so there's a lot there for me to unpack, and here I am doing it. And one of the greatest catalysts for that, I mean, in 2019, I distinctly remember like collapsing all of my conditioning around romance and sexuality, and then building it up pretty much from scratch. But of course, I'm going to be influenced by that programming within myself that I've yet to reach. But last year, I became one of my best friends here now in Austin. She is like a very proud sub, a very proud submissive, and like very vocal, at least to her close friends, about that space and just like her experiences, and very much encourages you to explore that world yourself. And so I did. Like it just became more present in my life, in front of me, and so I did explore that space. And later that year, like there was a dom that came into my life, and I explored through that. And this year, the greatest vehicle for my sexual liberation is my current partner. He's done a lot of work himself, like been to multiple ISTA, which is I blanking on the exact acronym, but it's like a sexual liberation retreat. And he's really helped me do the same in our own private container. And so the ones that I'll read are inspired by him.
This is like really intimate, so thank you. And also like what an inspiration for other people to just be encouraged to explore what their own sexuality means to them in whatever form that may take. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And I will say, like, I'm pretty vanilla. Like I'm very open. But like I'm an energetic, I like sensual and very connected, like heart chakra and above connection. But the exploration is beautiful. You explore yourself, you explore another, and you're breaking free from yourself and probably your line from a lot of, I mean, depending on what your lineage is, but highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Okay, so this is an ode to my lover. I kiss his body from hips to crown, then all the way back down, honoring my king while asking him if I may make my way to his sacred thing. I gaze up at him so he can see my thirsty plea. Will he agree? Lubricated lips glistening, body listening. Fingers form a ring, wrapping around him, seeing him let go, feeling him grow, hearing him groan. his pleasure my own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is one that I wrote after our first sexual experience together. So again, self-exploration. I'm still discovering what it is that I like and rooting in that. Especially because, to get very personal, I think this is very true for for any person, actually, is like knowing our yeses and our nos, especially in a sexual container. It's like it's so easy to either to not to be quiet and like not express for fear or whatever, or to be so focused on the pleasure of your partner and not your own that you put yourself aside, and neither is healthy. And so this one's called What I Like. Start slow. Say hello. Introduce pendulum to portal. Remind me you are God, masked as mortal. Look at me deeply. Make me look back. If I meet your gaze, will you show me your ways? Help me feel safe and excited to open my door and beg you for more. Can you feel as I pour my power into yours, turning myself over to you, my essence essentially in your control? Please take care of my soul. Command me. State clearly what you demand of me. I will obey. But I can also be a brat. So let me know what happens if I say no. Is it one spank or three? Perhaps you drive deeper into me or withhold your depth until I hold my breath. Your hands over my mouth or just south, firmly pressed upon my throat. As you bring me to the brink of it all, sensation, pleasure, pain, it's all your call. Put me where you want me, prone, split, or straddle. Use what you want to, glove, strap, or paddle. That is what I like.
Oh, oh.
That one's kinky.
Oh,
You like my curls.
I like your curls. This is what I like. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. This is so fun. I think for a lot of women, like you kind of like preface before this latest poem, is that we don't necessarily always feel deeply into what we really want in a sexual experience, in a pleasure experience. And recently I went through a ceremony where we did a prayer, pleasure prayer, basically. And it was all around like self pleasure and like what you really want, what you really like. And that was something that really like resonated with me on a deeper level because I hadn't really thought of it before. And like you mentioned, it's like sometimes we're just always thinking about like, oh, well, what would please the other person? Like what? And so then we get in our head, and especially for women, it can be like this big, like psychological, like even like, damn, I got to vacuum. Like there's a piece of dust over there. Like, I got so much to do. Like it can be this like thing that you like, don't just like allow yourself to just fully fucking relax and be able to receive, like the big energy of like being able to receive. And so I appreciate that poem. And also like cut to reminds me of like Jessica in my 20s when I just didn't know what the fuck I wanted. And so there was no yes or no. It was like literally just like, okay. Like, and the amount of times I felt like taken advantage of was like, fuck, like why did I allow that thing to occur when like that wasn't really deeply resonant with me, but I didn't know how to express it. And so I don't know, maybe just like a PSA for even younger women that like aren't fully experienced and don't fully know exactly what they want yet, to be able to like have these prayers of pleasure of what they really want, so that you can spell that into existence. Not to say that you won't have these like, experiences that you don't necessarily want, because those are great too. They allow you to figure out what you like and what you don't like, but to have more safe containers where this can be talked about, so that women can really feel into what that means. Because like you, when I was younger, my parents, I grew up in like Episcopalian, which is like a form of Catholicism, and went and did confirmation, all the things. I didn't really know a lot about what I was doing. I was just like going through the motions, because that's what you did. You went to church, you did the things. I didn't feel like as much pressure from like the religious experiences when I was younger as I think some people have, but I did feel it as like this conscious guide of like, oh, that's wrong, or you're not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And so just having like more integrated spaces, especially for younger women, where we can like basically come back to the roots of ancient practices and sacred practices of initiating maiden into a senior maiden, into a junior mother, into a mother, like whatever the steps are, so that we can really like create safe containers for people to have these explorations at a younger age. So anyway, that's just my stream of consciousness thought from hearing all of your words. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, absolutely. I think the biggest factor is, first of all, being rooted in yourself and having that conviction, because lust and hormones flooding your body, you're under the influence, and so being so rooted and practiced in that is going to be important, because you need it to be innate, right, and not a psychological process or a mental process. And so teaching, and I think the biggest or just like the central component of that is communication within or between partners of any kind. It's like, what are my expectations, and what are our agreements, and going from there.
Yeah. And like, what a gift that you have this partner who's like really in the depths of like learning about that kind of sexual energy. I think for a lot of people out there, they're probably going to be like, well, I don't have a partner like that, so I can't come out. But it's like,
be that partner.
Yeah, you have to embody it yourself, right? And so it's always a communication. And for me, it's like, I've been with my partner for over 15 years. We've gone through so many versions of ourselves, and like, we like different shit now, and that's okay too. Like, and like having that communication to be like, I want to kind of try this, like, and having that be like not judgmental, and like also like really fun and playful, and not feel pressure. So yeah, I agree. It's all about communication, being able to communicate wants, needs, any type of pleasure practice. And prayer is so welcome.
Yeah. And if you don't feel safe expressing that with your partner, then look at that.
Yeah.
If you don't feel safe speaking, you probably don't feel safe doing anything else. So maybe don't. And also another little PSA is like, especially men who do these practices and harness their sexual energy, be careful. Be careful. They're powerful. Like, that is a magnetism. And so,
yeah, like, I mean, it's a magnetism for both sexes, right? It's like a king being in that like full masculine energy, or a queen being in that like full fucking, I'm like reclaiming my fucking pussy, and like, this is like, I'm in my goddess fucking shit right now. That's power. Like, that is power. And so you just have to be careful how you weave that into the world, because that might, especially for people out there that are single and have that like intense energy just walking around like in human form, it can be like a magnet for maybe some things that you don't want to call in.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was speaking through the lens of my cis experience. And so, absolutely right. Anybody who harnesses that, so just be aware. If you're asking yourself for like, I don't understand why, like, I feel so attracted. I don't know what's happening. If there's like yes, there are, soul connections, but if there is like this ineffable force pulling you towards something that consciously you're like, that might not be so good for me, like, take a beat, really assess.
Take a beat.
Is that not a common phrase? Because I said that the other day and someone was like, what?
I love it. I haven't heard it before. I don't know if it's common or not, but I like it. I'll spread it far and wide. Take a beat, man. Also too, like, just like I don't know, a confession of sorts, but I feel like this is like a lot of like when young girls, like when, at least I'll speak for myself, when I was young and I started to like realize the power of that energy, I was like, ooh, yeah, like I'm gonna go use this, and it's like, and then it was like getting into circumstances where I was like, oh no, but I don't want to use it in that. And so then you kind of have to have that discernment. But when you first like realize the power of that like sacred energy, it's like, oh shit, okay. Like, so there's a lot of discernment involved in harnessing energies like that. But anyway, I appreciate that in poem form. That's beautiful. Two things I have to ask. One is, because we didn't talk about this, but you mentioned it before you started reciting a lot of your poetry, is that you had plant medicine experiences, and then you kind of had this like almost like a darkness where you were like, fuck, like I don't know what to do with all of this. What called you to dabble with plant medicines in the first place? And you mentioned Bufo. I'm curious, like, what other plant medicine experiences that you have, because maybe you did, but I'm assuming you didn't like cut to Bufo, like. So what led you to that experience, kind of like rewinding and taking us back to that moment?
Yeah. So I feel like there was like this big wave of awakening in 2020, and it was like a smidge before that. The stirrings began in 2018. I fully remember that because I was with someone who, I was dating this guy, and I remember expressing that I wanted to try LSD and ayahuasca, not together, obviously, separate, but he got up in arms. I mean, furious that I would do such a thing. And I had to end up saying, like, for as long as we're together, I won't do it. And I made it a point to like put that caveat. It's like, I'm not going to promise you that I will never do this. But if it's important to this relationship, okay. And I remember that relationship ended, and I actually, oh my gosh, okay. Awakening stories, right? They began in 2018. Every part of my life was toxic: work, relationship, family life, my health. And so I went to Nicaragua and I was invited to stay at this co-living space for digital nomads, co-living, co-working space. And that's kind of when everything started unraveling. I'm away from my day-to-day life and conventions that I know. And I distinctly remember asking one of my friends there, like, have you ever done Reiki? And she was like, yeah. I said, did it work? Yeah, it does something. And so without having this knowledge of this whole world that I now know, there was a lot of curiosity and a call and a pull toward this world. And then it was at the end of that year that I did do my first intentional LSD journey. And I remember being on the rooftop of this apartment building and recognizing duality. I was like, wow, there is an equal opposite to everything. And that there's a lot of journaling after that. And it wasn't until I came to this town in Dominican Republic, that Dominican Republic is the country where my parents are from, but there was this town at the North Coast they had never been, and it's called the water sports capital of the world. It's called Cabarete. And I was like, what is this place? I'm really into board sports, and I'd wakeboarded and surfed before. I'm like, what is this place? I must go. So in the middle of my taking care of my mom and handling that whole situation, I took myself on a little vacation there. And there were so many synchronicities, like moment to moment. So I extended my stay from 3 to 5 nights, and then ended up putting a deposit down on an apartment. And at this time, I am mentally, emotionally, spiritually wrecked, and I am seeking. I am like a seeker through and through at this point. And I remember scrolling through the town's like Facebook group, and I come across this like really kitschy promo graphic for Combo. And it's like, it's looking like snake oil at this point, like can heal A through Z of all of these different ailments. And I'm like, I need it. So I get to, I contact the facilitators, and we meet at this cafe, and they're telling me all about the medicine and its origin. And they're like, think about it, let us know. I'm like, when can we do it? I think it's a Saturday at this point. And they're like, how about Monday morning? And I was like, done. Like, I didn't need to know. Like, I already knew. My body knew. And I remember that morning feeling actually a lot of grief that these fringe, I didn't know the word at the time, but modalities are available, and ones that provide true healing, and they aren't known to the general public. And that broke my heart. My dad is an MD. He's a family physician, and like allopathic medicine through and through, like, fucked me up with ibuprofen and antibiotics my whole life. But like my whole body knew that I was about to heal. So it began with Combo, and that I had like not the worst it can get, but a really bad candida overgrowth. Like my gut health was shot. And imagine like, my reproductive system too, because imagine like I'm becoming a mom to my mom. And so like my womb was in disarray as well. And I like to say that Combo cleared me and ayahuasca healed me, or sealed me. And so it, did the 3 sessions back to back to back. Combo went from 3 gates to 7. And then 3 weeks later did sat with Aya. And like I said, like, she whispered in my ear, like, don't worry, it's taken care of. Like, it's done. And that was very impactful. Like I had been struggling with that for over 2 years at that point. And then this is an interesting one, and it's just like maybe not the most responsible of medicine practices, but I was called the next day after ayahuasca and asked how I was feeling. And I said, my intention was to heal the desire to depart. Like and apathy. I was not feeling, I could not feel an emotion besides grief or sadness. And like, that neurological response, like the lightning through your heart, it had been probably 4 years since I felt something like that. And so I was like, please, I just need to feel. And so I had said, like, I'm still not really feeling. And they offered Bufo the very next day. So Aya one day and Bufo the next. And so at that point, I did not, I did do Bufo, but I didn't have the send off. I was still rallying with ego at that point. And I remember feeling every emotion that I had suppressed in the last 3 years in that moment. I went from laughter to anger to sobbing to screaming in what, 15 minutes? So I did a lot more medicine then in the coming months. It was through that year, I think it was 4 more ayahuasca ceremonies, 1 more bufo ceremony. I don't think I did any mushrooms or anything like that. I was just doing the hardest stuff, I guess. And then I took months of integration. And mind you, I am sober. I have my very strong meditation practices. At that point, I had a very strong community. So like I went hard, and I also had very support. I had people showing up hard. So like that much medicine in that amount of time is not something that I would recommend lightly. That was my journey, and it worked for me. And it also dismantled me. I mean, as I've mentioned, I wanted to die for several years, and it was the strong support that was unique to me in my experience that kept me here. So just a caveat to all of that.
Yeah, thank you for the caveat. I appreciate that. And I know also that you just mentioned too that you don't have a relationship with alcohol, and you've been trying to like, not trying, but you have created a company where people can basically hire you to facilitate events. And your company's called Alternative, and it's in Austin. I would love because I'm just going to butcher it. So I would love for you to just chat about your business. And I do want to say I'm so like pumped that this is getting out in the world, even though it's like really local and you're like working on your brick and mortar right now. I do see this expanding as an offering that kind of trickles out into the world, because I don't have a great relationship with alcohol. I don't really drink at all. I don't like the way it makes me feel. My husband has stopped completely drinking. Like we don't really have places we can go or spaces we can go to here locally that offer an alternative. And I would say like the caveat to that would be like if we're traveling and we find like a really cool kava bar or like somewhere where we can go and like it's like a welcome community that's not centered around alcohol. And so I love that this is like basically like creating itself and birthing itself into the world, because I think it's so needed. And it's also really fucking cool. Like I was looking at your website, like your stuff is just amazing. So I'll let you chat about kind of how you got into the space of creating this really cool business, because I think that's pretty fucking rad.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Yeah, it is the manifestation of 2 prayers. The first one being, as I mentioned, like I have hyper awareness, especially after awakening and connecting with myself at a deeper level. I mean, I can feel everything at all times, from my toes to my temples, my teeth in my mouth. And it's very uncomfortable. And so I was praying, like, please help me quell this. Like, and the response was, the plants are there for you. The plants are there for you. And at the time, the plant medicines that I knew are the ones I just spoke of. They're intense. And so, I mean, some people do this, but I didn't think that sipping ayahuasca every day was my solution. And so I began searching for milder medicines that could help me with my particular discomforts. And so that led me to kava, kanna, valerian roots, CBD, sometimes, I mean, a little bit of kratom here and there, but I'm careful with kratom. I think everybody should be careful with kratom. And that it really helped, right? And so I started sharing that. When I would bring tinctures around with me, not only for myself, but like, I'd go out, get a soda water, Richard's rainwater, whatever, and just do a few drops of kava in there. I started bringing it to events, to meetups, to small gatherings, and share. I'd bring like whatever sparkling water, some juices, and my tinctures. And then I realized like, oh, there's something here. And so my prayer all of last year and this year has been guide me toward the greatest good. And that guided me straight to this idea. And like my mind was flooded with the ideas and the branding and the, creative marketing background. And everything was just there, just waiting for me to go. And so the beginning of this year, I hit go and, register the LLC, created all of the logos and the branding and the copy. And it took a little bit of a backseat because of the partner that I mentioned. I was traveling a lot to go see him. He also wanted to maybe be a part of it. And so it was put on hold. I was also taking on other jobs and other freelance jobs that were pulling me away. And so it was only this year that this little baby was birthed, and the site went live about 2 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, it's a fresh birthing. This is like a freshie. I'm even more excited that we're talking about it. You've like become an alchemist in your own way, because you're like, oh, I'm bringing these tinctures around and I'm doing this and doing that, like almost like tincturing people. And then you're like, oh, I'm like actually an alchemist. Like, this is who I am.
Oh yeah.
Really cool.
So sorry, to give the elevator pitch for Alternative, it is a non-alcoholic elixir bar for, it's a portable bar. So right now the business model is that we set up at events, and we're serving functional beverages and native brews from behind a really beautiful bar setup. It's set up as an altar, and the sacred items on the altar are in resonance with whatever the intention of the event is. And to your point about expansion, I needed this to be small for myself, or I wouldn't do it. Like, I'm a very big-minded person, but nervous system says no. So I made it a small business, but the intention is to expand. And like, there's phase 2 and expansion cities and brick and mortar and franchise potentialities and funding. So taking it day by day.
Absolutely. Like we said earlier, words are spells. So you're just like sending that manifestation into the universe. And I know that it will come back in the greatest way to serve all of humanity, because that's your prayer. Well, thank you for creating that, because I think it's really, really cool. And so you're creating basically like mocktails, kind of, right? They're super pretty too. Like they're like, I can see this being like an alternative for people that are like doing family reunions or weddings or retreats, things like where they don't want it to be centered around alcohol, but they want cool, fun, like alchemist cocktails, but mocktails to be a part of the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're functional. So that's the differentiator. There's a few mostly traditional alcohol cater bars are offering mocktail menus, but it's they're pretty, and I've got nothing against mocktails, but they don't do anything. It's just sugar water, and they're fun and bubbly. And if that's what you want, amazing. I want something that is going to serve me, right? And so that's where the plants come into play. And some of our favorites, as I mentioned, are kava, kana, cacao, and hemp.
Can you, for those who don't know what those main kind of like elixir ingredients are, can you explain what the tincture benefits would be of kava, kana, cacao, etc.?
Sure, yeah. So one of the main things that I did was learn the pharmacology of these plants. Like, how does it affect the body physiologically? And so kava is dopaminergic. It works with your dopamine receptors, and it also works on your central nervous system. So it downregulates, it suppresses, like alcohol does, without the cognitive fuckery. Yeah, so it's going to relax you, as it brings you deeper into your body, more able to connect with others. Kana is also very highly connective. It actually works on serotonin receptors. So it's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which means you're going to keep more serotonin in your brain. So instead of like MDMA, which dumps serotonin in your brain, And that's what causes all of those euphoric, happy, please touch me feelings. It's really just a flooding of serotonin. And so Kana is a lot lighter. It's keeping the serotonin you already have present a little bit longer, and it bioaccumulates and, gives you a little bit of a boost within a certain time period. Cacao, heart opener. I mean, it's chocolate, right? So it's magnesium and it's got theobromine, and these are all, it works on relaxation, and it's also a bit of a stimulant because it's got a little bit of caffeine, and it's just fun. Cacao has been served for centuries in ancient civilizations, so a lot of history there. And then hemp, pretty common. It's can either do, and there's like, now that it's expanding, there's so many, they're isolating the cannabinoids. And so there's so many different options now, but to keep it simple, either CBD or THC or a combination. And the CBD is downregulating, it's calming, it's connective. And then the THC is psychoactive, as you know, marijuana. So those are what we're using. I love Kratom. I personally do use it. I'm also like a very disciplined and individual, and have like literally genetically my D12 dopamine receptor isn't very sensitive, and so I don't have addictive tendencies. But though I love Kratom, I'm not going to be offering it because it does have the possibility for dependency, and I don't want to spread that.
Noted, for sure. I haven't tried Kratom, so I don't know much about it at all. But thank you for the PSA, and also thank you for creating a differentiator, because what I was like alluding to is like, oh, this is like a mocktail, but you're like, no, it's not even a mocktail. It's like a healing drink. It's an elixir that can heal your body in a different type of way. And so, yeah, I appreciate that you're creating this in the world, along with all of the beautiful spoken word poetry that you are also jamming into the world too, because it's all part of it. It's all part of like the weaving that you're doing and being able to create. So I just so appreciate that. And we've kind of like bounced around throughout our talk, which all good. I feel like that's like our personalities are just like bouncing. Thank you for creating this. Where can people find Alternative? Do you have a website, Instagram, social media? Do you have things up and running yet? Because it is so fresh.
Yeah. So the Instagram is up. It's altar, like a sacred altar, ALTAR, native bar. So at alternative bar, and the domain is the same. It's alternativebar.com.
Perfect. Yay. So everyone listening, go ahead there and check it out. Before we like take a beat, do you feel called to share any other of your poems before we sign off? Because I'd love to hear more if you have any that you're like, should have shared that.
Okay, there's one. Let me decide, because one is very alive for me personally, and one is, I feel kind of the collective calling for it, if that makes sense.
We have time.
Okay. Let's go with one that follows the theme of a lot of our conversation, which was the suicidality and overcoming that. Final poem. This is the last poem of the album, right? So I did the first one, the third one, and now I'm going to do the last one. So there's still 4 to go. So when I release it, please go listen. Yeah, so this one was kind of like the sword to that era of my life. that feeling. And I got very into the law of one, which is a channeled work, and found a lot of seeming truths, definitely things that resonated for myself. And one of those things was that anything that's ailing you, especially if you are a being of the light, if you're working with the light, it could potentially be an energetic attack by a being that's serving the darkness, what we refer to as darkness. And so woven into this poem, that's just a little bit of context, because woven into this poem is a reference to that. I mean, the whole thing is a reference to that. So this one's called If It Were, I Won. Not too long ago, a negative fifth density entity was convincing me to kill myself. And he was good. No, sorry. He was bad. What I meant to say is that he was clever. Had me believing that I could end my life whenever with no real ramification, which honestly filled me with a sensation of elation, because what I wanted was to rest. True rest, not the half death of mortal sleep. I wanted to reap the immortal benefit of infinite lightness that I had somehow remembered and now deeply miss. Oh shit. Was I remiss when I chose to hit that pipe of bliss some of you know as 5-MeO? I had remembered, and now I can't forget. But no, I don't regret, because in it I was offered a choice: to ascend the higher realms or return to the body being held below. And here I am. Hello. Now it's simply a game of rediscovery, to discern why it is I chose to return. And my negative friend was merely a means to an end in that journey. But for a moment there, he had me. Thank God for my friends, my tribe, my tethers. Because of them, my silver cord I did not sever. But I was close, until one day, while out on my balcony, sun on my skin, I began to assess what was happening within. And that's when it occurred to me. What if it was an entity, like I had read about in the Law of one who comes to offer darkness to those operating in the light as a choice, a right? Because if polarity is true, as I perceive it to be, that is how we balance reality. This concept is shown in many an allegory, that of the two wolves, the devil and angel on your shoulder, Mary Magdalene, and what Jesus told her. But I never heard it put as concisely as Mike Tyson, when he said, when you're favored by God, you're also favored by the devil. He's coming for you too. So you just got to be strong, stay on the right side. Whose side are you going to go on? You stay with who brought you here. You go home with the guy that brought you to the dance. Once I remembered this entity began to be known to me. He couldn't hide in the shadow if I demanded to know. To me, yourself you must show. I demanded. And then one night I met him. He had purple skin and the horns of a ram and didn't give a damn about cosmic law. He was after me for who I am, taking advantage of the fact that I am in the form of man. Because in higher realms, I am an angelic light being that sends negative entities fleeing to avoid being depowered by the light. And that night, I remembered that. The power of love. In that moment, I knew how to rise above. I chose to see him, acknowledge him for exactly what he was, for his power, his cunning, his chase. Acknowledging that he is in his rightful place. Earth is for all, positive and negative, dark and light. And it isn't a fight. It's a dance. So I danced with this devil, decidedly loving him for exactly what he was. And through this energy I conveyed, look, while I respect you, revere you, admittedly, maybe even get off on being near you. We have no business together. The music has stopped. This dance is done. And while it isn't a fight, if it were, I won. That's my favorite.
Yes.
Oh, it feels so good.
It's so I don't believe in coincidences, so this is definitely a synchronicity coming through. But before we started recording today, I had this like strange feeling of like the yin yang energy and like polarity and duality just in general. And it's like the exact reason why I'm wearing black and white right now, because I was like, oh, I'm like really feeling like this shadow light dueling scenario. And so I'm going to like represent that through like the dress and the garb that I have. And and it was like going through my mind all morning. And I went to a yoga class and I was like, get this out. Like, I don't want to think about this right now. It's like too heady for me. Like I'm done with this topic. Like get out. And so anyway, it's just like now coming up as a synchronicity that this is what we've been talking about the entire time we've been chatting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't realize this, but I began to answer your question about my plant medicine journey, talking about that moment on the roof, like noticing duality.
Yeah.
It's a theme.
It's a lot. Thank you for sharing your beautiful gifts with not only me right now in this moment, but when we air this podcast episode with all the listeners. I think that you are magic. I think that you have this just incredible inspiration, not just for me, but for the world. And I love that you're bringing it out in the form of poetry, in the form of spoken poetry, and really like sharing your soul and all your emotions. Like you can just feel it so deeply. And I love that you're making an album. I just like, I think that's going to be so fucking dope. And so if that comes to fruition before we air this, which it may or may not, then we'll definitely link the like where you can find that. Are you planning to like launch on Spotify or any platform?
Yeah, it'll be available everywhere once it's out there. And maybe that was just a universal elbow to me to get it out there before
It is.
there's
It is an elbow from me to you. Let's go. No, I just so appreciate you sharing. And I think it's gonna be super rad because even me as a breathwork practitioner, like I can see myself like weaving some of your art into breathwork ceremony. And I just had like a vision of that happening because your poetry hits. I mean, it just fucking hits. So thank you. Thank you for creating. Thank you for being the light that you are and the dark that you are. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. You are magic. And thank you for creating this. And I'm gonna use it right now. I'm gonna use your platform, step up
Please
on it,
do.
and just invite any musical artist or artist of any time at any kind to collaborate. Like if any of these words resonated with you, hit me up. Let's do something cool. Let's create something. I would love to hear my words sampled in all kinds of music. So
That's definitely a spell. Thank you for being a witch. Thank you for being amazing. It was so great to have you on here. And thank you to all the listeners. We will see you next time. This is the Seikird Healing Podcast. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Yasmin. Love you. For those of you who don't already know, my husband and I own a coffee company called Gay Head Coffee. And of course, we drink our own coffee every day, and it's some of the most flavorful and inviting coffee, especially with the nostalgia of coming from a can rather than paper or plastic packaging. But I'm biased, so check it out for yourself. If you're interested, head over to the show notes where you will find a link to order your coffee today from gayheadcoffee.com. That's GAYHEADCOFFEE.com. Thank you all for your support. It means the world to us as a small business.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.